Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for June 5th, 2020, recorded around 2:11 p.m. Eastern Time. This is going to be mainly focused around Tropical Storm Cristobal, just coming off the Yucatan Peninsula, but we will touch on the sea surface temperature anomalies here a little bit. The update as of yesterday, June the 4th, again, are El Nino's southern oscillation, or the El Nino conditions that were in this area earlier this year has now been completely wiped off of existence. There is not going to be any sort of El Nino this year at all. Again, there is likely to be a La Nina. The water temperatures in this region are now about a full 2 degrees Celsius below the long-term average. In the meantime, the Atlantic Main Development Region continues of AMO signature in this area. That's going to set up the warming of the tropical Atlantic here, the main development region. That's going to allow for these tropical waves to come off and find themselves in a very favorable environment. Now, there might be some slight cooling of the MDR as we go through the next couple of weeks, but then that's likely to rebound. We're likely to see some fluctuations in terms of the water temperatures in this region, but for the most part, they're setting up to warm. And if we take a look here, this is just coming off of cyclonicwx.com. This is the NOAA Coral Reef temperature anomalies, the sea surface temperature anomalies updated as of today. They're based on 1982 to 2010 climatology. Again, this is our old kind of phase 2-ish AMO signature, which has waned off to more of this phase 1 look here. Again, there is some little cool spots, cool neutral out here in the MDR, but for the most part, we're right off the coast of Guinea here, and then to the east there of the Azore Islands. Those are where the water temperatures are beginning to warm. That's going to transition this warmth all the way down south, this AMO feed, as the currents of the water will feed it down in here. Going to warm the tropical Atlantic. It's hurricane season. It's here, and it looks like it's going to be a busy season. So we have a lot to watch here over the next several weeks in terms of the thermodynamic environment. Now, if we take a look here at the upper ocean heat content, this was updated this morning. Again, what you're really looking for is the yellows, greens, and reds and oranges in here. This is taking a look at all the warmer water at depth. How deep in the water do these warmer temperatures get? And again, where you start getting into these yellows, oranges, greens, those are where you have the higher upper ocean heat content values. Even here in some of the lighter blue values like you see out here in the Gulf of Mexico, those are still fairly significant in terms of the latent heat potential, the latent heat releases, and all that process. And where Cristobal is going to be going now is it's going to be coming out here into this very favorable area of the Gulf. Water temperatures in this region are running a couple of degrees Celsius below or above the long-term average in some of these areas. Again, this is going to set up for a decently favorable environment for this time of the season. And if we take a look here at Cristobal, it is once again now a tropical storm. It came off here today and became a tropical storm once again as of 2 o'clock this afternoon. The Hurricane Center did designate this at 40 miles per hour and about 1,000 millibars. We do now have tropical storm watches that have been issued for portions of the Gulf Coast of the United States, all the way basically from west of New Orleans, all the way to east of New Orleans, including southern Mississippi, extreme southern Alabama, and the extreme western Florida panhandle. This is going to be a very heavily weighted to the east type system. However, we have seen, not significant, but pretty good shifts in some of the models today that have indicated that this might be a little bit better organized by the time it gets to the coast, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. We also have tropical storm warnings for portions of the Yucatan Peninsula as this is coming north now, producing a field of tropical storm force winds near and just to the east of the center. As this will continue to lift northward through tonight, we should have a reconnaissance, an Air Force reconnaissance Hurricane Hunter aircraft that should be in there later this evening. That should provide us with a better understanding of Cristobal's intensity and structure at that time. And if we take a look here at the visible satellite from COD Meteorology, taking a look here over the last 48 frames, basically starting from earlier this morning, you do notice that we have seen a fairly decent organization in the structure. Now, we still do see a fairly lopsided system. Our center is actually still over land, so it is actually interesting that Cristobal re-intensified into a tropical storm, but the actual true center is right about there over land, but the larger scale circulation is actually here almost completely over water. Some of it, yeah, it's still over land, especially with our true low-level center in there, but we have this larger gyre in here that's creating all of these showers and thunderstorms to the east of the center. Now, you notice there's a lot of dry air back here, and that's going to be the one problem. There's a lot of dry air entrainment that's going to be brought into the system. You can see by some of these kind of milky white cirrus clouds over there, some of the arc-type clouds that you see over here towards the Mexican coastline here. Those are indications of this drier air mass, this subsidence that's over here. And you know anything about a low pressure, it's counterclockwise kind of activity through here, the spin right here. So you're going to be bringing in a lot of this drier air, drier continental air that's come down from the continental United States, and that's going to be brought in around the system. And that's going to allow for some dry air entrainments into the core of Cristobal. Now, again, it's going to be important for Cristobal, if it wants to strengthen all that much, to be a very tight circulation, which could actually dampen out a lot of the drier air and a lot of the shear. Now, the shear problem is not going to be as much as we first thought. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. If we take a look here at the 850 vorticity, this is the spin in the atmosphere about 5,000 feet off the ground. Towards the reds and whites, you're getting the higher cyclonic spin in the atmosphere. And what you're noticing is that in this area, we've started to see that spin kind of come back to life with more of those whites and darker reds in there. That's now suggesting that we have a much tighter circulation. And if we go back to the visible satellite here, we'll just kind of play this at a faster loop. You do notice not only how the center of circulation has moved off to the north, but we do have a more rigorous circulation in turning than we did earlier this morning and last night. Especially last night, the circulation wasn't all that well organized. Now today it's become organized once again. We have a tropical storm warnings now in effect for portions of the Yucatan and the Yucatan Peninsula all the way over to the Belize side of the area. Now, if we take a look here at the vertical wind shear, again, we are still dealing with some shear, about 20 to 25 knots right now over the eastern half of this. And again, this will continue to run up into the shear. Now, that's going to limit a very significant intensification of the system. It's not going to rapidly intensify into a major hurricane or anything. As we would typically expect for June, it's not going to intensify all that much. However, the National Hurricane Center has officially gone with 60 miles per hour upon landfall, although it could be a little bit stronger or weaker depending on the evolution of Cristobal. Again, nothing in weather is 100% until it's happening in real time. You can see there is some stagnant periods here through the next 24 and 36 hours where it actually stays at 50 miles per hour. Will that happen or not? We'll have to remain and see. Now, if we take a look here at the GFS forecast, this is a little bit of a change that we've seen in the model trends from last night. And we touched about this in the 0Z run or the 06Z runs. Notice in the 850 millibar vorticity, that's more of a closed, healthier circulation than this very spread out type, almost subtropical look. And again, you notice on the GFS forecast out to the next 42 hours, it's further west, but it's also a much tighter circulation here. And if we take a look here, we'll try to find the relative humidity, and there we go. This is the relative humidity coming off the GFS forecast from tropicaltidbits.com. Again, this is the dry air that we were talking about getting entrained into the system. But you notice how this is further off towards the east of this, and that's further off towards the east. This is the dry continental air mass that's getting wrapped in behind it. You notice what's going to be the main problem: very heavy rainfall for portions of the Florida Peninsula, the I-10 corridor. Generally, it's going to be a very heavy rainmaker. But you do notice, compare that to 2 frames ago here. This was the GFS forecast. That was the 0Z run. And you do notice that the circulation is much broader. There's a lot more dry air to be entrained into this. So there is the potential that Cristobal could be deepening and strengthening a tad bit as it approaches the coastline here. The GFS forecast is a 989 surface pressure moving up in the general direction here towards New Orleans and the Gulfport, and just to the west of Gulfport, Mississippi. Again, then that subtle bend back towards the west occurs as the ridge of high pressure out here is building. That's going to force this kind of around that ridge as this high pressure moves off towards the east. And then that's going to subtly bend around that ridge and kind of follow out something like that. And we see that very well amped up by the GFS forecast. And if we go to the European forecast here, the 12Z run that's coming out, again, the European model is a little bit weaker. It's more broad. We've seen the European go from more of this tighter circulation to more of this broader, almost subtropical-ish type deal. Again, that's going to be the main thing, is does Cristobal tighten up enough? We have seen in the model fields, especially on the GFS, which was one of the more very conservative models to begin with, that this has now shown signs that the dry air is not going to be as significant to the system if Cristobal can tighten up into that very tight circulation and really kind of keep out that dry air. And eventually then Cristobal does move that subtle bend back towards the west here and then should continue up something like that over the next several days or so. So the main takeaways is that this is going to be a very heavy rain threat for portions of the southeastern United States, especially here to be heavily weighted, eastern Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, even going into portions of Florida. You notice, again, on the GFS forecast, out to hour 54, you do notice how this is now approaching the coast. There's still a lot of moisture over the Florida Peninsula, over portions of Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, and that kind of continues. Eventually, Cristobal becomes cut off from the other moisture here. This drier air begins to work in very close to the coast. Will that hamper, Cristobal's intensification? Yes, it more than likely will. We are likely to see somewhat of a moderate to strong tropical storm right now. Again, the official forecast from the Hurricane Center does then make this 60 miles per hour upon approaching the coastline in just at landfall. Could it be a weaker Category 1 hurricane? Yes, it certainly could. That is not out of the realm of the possibilities at this point. But could it also be a weaker tropical storm under 50 miles per hour? Yes, it certainly could. However, the intensification rates through here do seem, the Gulf-based state does seem at least favorable for some strengthening, modest strengthening over the next several days now as this gets ready to move over water once again. Again, just for reiteration, Tropical Storm Cristobal has officially been redesignated as a tropical storm now upon approaching the Yucatan coastline and the Gulf of Mexico, with our center of circulation somewhere right about here, moving generally off towards the north. So again, we're going to be watching this very carefully here over the next day or so. Again, we will have a reconnaissance aircraft that is going to fly in here later this evening that's going to get more information on Cristobal's intensity and structure. So we'll be able to get a better understanding of what's going on in the true and tried sense here with our low-level center right now. Again, there's a lot of things to watch here over the next day or so. This will likely make landfall sometime Sunday night along the Louisiana coastline, likely anywhere between noon on Sunday and about 10 o'clock p.m. on Sunday evening. So there's a wide range of possibilities here, but again, for the most part, Cristobal, now a tropical storm once again, as it's now exiting land, is expected to modestly strengthen over the next day or so. Could become a Category 1 hurricane, or it could be a weaker system, but either way, lots of rainfall expected for portions of the southeastern United States, as this is a heavily easternly weighted system. So a lot to talk about here. Again, I'll have another video update later this evening, specifically talking about Tropical Storm Cristobal. Hope y'all have a great rest of your afternoon, and I'll see you guys here later this evening.